This is TWiT.
The world is changing rapidly. So rapidly, in fact, that it's hard to keep up. That's why Micah Sargent and I, Jason Howell, talk with the people making and breaking the tech news on Tech News Weekly every Thursday. They know these stories better than anyone, so why not get them to talk about it in their own words? Subscribe to Tech News Weekly, and you won't miss a beat every Thursday at twit.tv.
Let's talk about soccer and football. You did actually a great piece, Jason, on MLS and what Apple TV is doing with Major League Soccer. We've been waiting to hear about the other shoe to drop on Sunday Tickets. The last NFL package still not sold. The Athletic had a report saying there's something going on. We've talked about this before, that maybe Apple wants, well, for one thing, the NFL says you can't show in-market games, and you can't do it, and you can't put these games international, which is silly because the Niners just played in Mexico. The other teams play in London and Berlin. I mean, they want an international audience, but I guess they want to keep the rights themselves. Apple supposedly says, no, we want to do that. It's last December. Roger Goodell said the NFL is months away, not days away.
How many months?
Many months, at least a year, from selling a stake in NFL media, which includes Red Zone, the NFL website, the NFL Network. Maybe Apple's bidding for that. What do you think's going on?
I mean, I think at the highest level, I think it's two companies that expect to do to be able to do what they want. Right. I think like the NFL expects that everybody's going to come to them and say you're the best. And I think Apple expects everybody to come to them and say you're the best. Yep. And now they're dealing with each other. And so I think there's a culture clash here. Also, and that Athletic article did a really good job of explaining this. The NFL's view of their deals, their contracts, is you do everything that's in the contract to the letter of the contract. And Apple's view of contracts is give us room to innovate, right? Like, tell us what we can't do, but don't limit us to a list of things we can do. And I totally get that, right? Apple's like, we want to innovate. We want to figure things out. And the NFL is like, no, we sold you 5 things. You can only do those 5 things. And so there sounds like there's a culture clash there. I think it's also a little troubling that maybe there was some due diligence issues here where Apple didn't realize that the NFL already has an international streaming product, and so that's not part of the package. The package, look, I think what's really happening is the package was built for satellite. Right? It was built for DirecTV. It was built 15 years ago or whatever for a different era. And Apple is bidding on that package now, and they're saying, this doesn't make sense. We want to have these other features. And the NFL seems to be saying, well, yeah, but this is what's for sale. And I wonder whether Apple's just trying to push on them saying, could you talk to Fox? And could you talk to CBS? Because we want the local games, and we'll stream them with their ads, and it won't be a problem. And they're like, no. That's not what the deal is. So whether this is actual like hard negotiation or whether it's a culture clash, it is fascinating. This has never been the best fit for Apple because it isn't Apple broadcasting their own games. It's just Apple rebroadcasting other companies' broadcasts, putting a little layer on top of it. And then also it's just in the US, which is not the best fit for Apple's international ambitions. At the same time, though, for people outside the US who don't know, the NFL is king. It is by far the biggest. It's like the number one TV show is Sunday Night Football. Yep. Like it is king. Yep. And so if you're Apple and you want to get into sports, getting in with the NFL at all, maybe becoming their partner on NFL media, it's a huge thing.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things that is the challenge is that we're really seeing old media versus new media, so that, that we see, I deal with this almost on a daily basis, which is that I have we have a new way of doing something, and then you collide with old media, and this is what we have to do, and this is the structure, and this is what we're allowed to, this is what we're going to do, and it's been ingrained over the last 30, 40, 50 years. Yeah. And it's outdated. We all know it's outdated, and we all know that but stepping away from, it's worked up until now, and stepping away from it is really difficult. And the problem for Apple is that they write these contracts aren't year to year. These are 5-year contracts. I don't know how long this one is, but they're often 5-year contracts, 10-year contracts. They only want to do this once, and then they want to stop thinking about it for a while. And so the MLS is going to be really interesting to see what Apple does with MLS, because it's their it's a place that they can do research.
They had some scope. Because MLS is not as strong as NFL. They had some scope in this deal.
And
I have to point out though, because I've been through this a little bit recently, leaving the radio show. So you have an advantage with old media. You have scope, you have reach, and so there's things that. But admittedly, I will be able to do so much more with the same show if it's just ours and a podcast than I could ever do it with Premiere. But it's not just like, oh, kill the old media. There is some value to the old way of doing things, and so this is tricky, I guess.
I think you're right. It could be a clash when. Apple is one of the most brilliant things they do about running their business is making sure that they always control their own destiny, that they never have to be beholden to. They told Intel to get their mate and go home. The biggest CPU company in the world, because it was not working out for them that we can't control the CPU as well. We don't want to be limited by another company's idea of what kind of product that they should serve to us. So it can be difficult when they are not in a situation in which they can absolutely call the shots, because there is absolutely truth to obviously what Alex is saying. The fact that Alex is saying it predisposes one to understanding that there's truth. There's definitely going to be truth.
But the NFL is not wrong in saying we know how to do this, and we've done a pretty good job.
What I was going to finish up by saying is that Apple has to respect that there's reasons why we do the things we do. Just as when people say, look, and Apple, there is no reason for you not to have an iMessage client for Android. That's stupid. You're just doing this dogmatic thing where you don't want to support other platforms. Where Apple will say, okay, let me explain to you what happens if we decide to do a iMessage client for Android, and you may disagrmay with it, but they have a very good reason for that. And oftentimes, I think that when you have an old media company, when you have an established company, say you may think that this is a silly thing and an outdated thing, but actually this outdated thing is also holding up a number of things that are crucially important, and the value that you're giving us by replacing this does not exceed the service that this thing is giving us for being there.
And the question is, what does the NFL want out of Apple, right?
Yeah.
Like, do they want just cash? Like, and that may be what the issue is here, is that the NFL is like, look, you're deep pocketed, you want to get into sports streaming, this is the NFL, we're great, give us money. And or it's possible that what the NFL is looking with Amazon or with Apple is also a partner who is going to try to push innovation in their product in a way that maybe the legacy TV networks won't, and that they may learn something from that. And I think that there's a clash going on there too, potentially. It may also be that Apple's like, no, we want to be that for you. And the NFL's like, we really just want you to write the check. That's all.
And from my experience working with doing this, because it's a lot of what I do with doing this, is I don't think that they actually want Apple to innovate too much. Like, I think they really want the check. Yeah. Because the problem is I get into situations where I'll show someone how to, like, we can do all this great stuff, and then they go, oh, I don't want to do that, because once we open that, once the audience sees that, they can't go back, and now we're in.
We've like, just screwed all of our other partners.
If Apple moves to, let's say Apple took NFL to high frame rate, HDR, 4K or 8K, and just ran with that, the problem would be is that you could never go back to television. And so that means that the next negotiation is much rougher than the first one for the NFL. And so the NFL is always evolving. The one thing about the NFL is they'll spend years developing new technologies to make the show cooler and better and everything else, but they want to do it at a certain pace that everything gets kind of pulled along. And so I think that they may actually be resistant. And I think that that's why the MLS has been genius, is if Apple can get any toehold in to this process with the NFL. And I think the only reason that Apple's in the conversation right now, I bet you Apple is probably not making a lot of deals. Like, Apple's offering probably so much money that the NFL keeps talking to them. Yeah. But, so the NFL's like, I don't really want to do what Apple's asking. Oh, that's a lot of money.
But the money, because you have to keep in mind
this pot of gold that Apple's handed them, because this is like a scratch on the surface.
Is it just Roger Goodell who has to do this, or do they have to get the owners to approve it?
You gotta get the owners, the broadcasters, the partners.
It's a big,
huge consortium of everybody going, well,
I think we have to keep in mind, somebody in the chat room was asking, why doesn't the NFL just do this themselves and make their own streaming service? And the answer is they have their own streaming service. It's called NFL Plus.
How do you like it?
And it has different things in the U.S. and overseas and all that. The reason this is not just, let's not do Sunday Ticket, let's wrap it up and put it in NFL Plus, is Apple or Amazon will overpay for it more than it's worth in order to get people onto their ecosystem. And that is what the NFL wants to take advantage of, just like how DirecTV overpaid for it so that people would put satellite dishes on their roof, right? Because it was the only place you could get it. And once they're on the roof, well, then they're going to be your TV provider and you're going to cancel cable probably, right? That's the idea. And so I agree. It would be way simpler if the NFL just absorbed Sunday Ticket into NFL Plus, but they're not going to do it as long as there's a big pocketed company out there like Amazon and Apple who will pay. And in the end, I think what will probably happen is that either Apple or Amazon will finally just say, okay, we'll write the check. I think Apple's just trying to get the NFL to budge a little bit and do a little bit more for them. But it's unclear. It's not, like I said, it's not the best match because it is U.S. only. It's not the best fit, but it does get you in the door with the NFL, and Amazon's already in that door.
And the thing that's so mind-numbingly frustrating is the blackouts. Like just the, you know, like from a viewer perspective, someone who doesn't live in Pittsburgh but is a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, even this year, still a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. Is that I just want to watch the game, and you're just like, I'll pay for it. Like I would pay $10 to watch the game.
The
like,
cord cutter premise, the killer. So like the Steelers were on local TV for some reason in the Bay Area.
It was so great. I was like, I thought to myself, I literally within a minute. So the Dallas was just crushing the Vikings, and that was the game that was on YouTube TV. And I thought to myself, I was watching it. It was playing on one of my screens, and while I was working, and I thought, man, I just want to see the third and fourth quarter of the Steeler game. I just want to see this game. And literally, I kid you not, within like 30 seconds, it just popped over the affiliate. I was like,
the affiliate bailed. So this is what my point is. So if you're a fan of a team, let's say that's the Steelers, the problem with the way it's architected right now is if you are watching that game locally on Fox and you're a cord cutter, so you can't get it, there's no way for you to get it other than a VMPVD, an over-the-top streaming service. If it's on CBS, you could get Paramount Plus and you would actually be able to see it, but Fox hasn't done that. And this is the frustration here, right? Is like, I want to watch my freaking local game, and like, how do I do it? And even with Sunday Ticket, you can't do it and that's, I think, what Apple is saying is like, look, this product doesn't make sense because of all the blackout restrictions. We need to take them off.
Remember, this is the problem. There's so many stakeholders. There's the locals. There's the networks. There's cable.
Fox would have to approve of that, right?
Yeah, and I know this just from 20 years ago with Tech TV. You can't piss off the incumbent stakeholders by embracing a new stakeholder. And so this is very delicate. Of course, the NFL wants to move into the future, but they have all these stakeholders. They have to. I didn't even think about this. You have to appeal to every single individual owner.
It goes all the way down to the local ads being run by the cable networks, you know, that are there because they get a certain number of local ads during even the Super Bowl and during a football game. And you know, my brother pays. You throw it into a lottery. We have a golf course outside of Pittsburgh, and so he throws bird's foot, ads into the lottery, and sometimes they show up on a Steeler game, and suddenly they said like at the this is what gets back to traditional media. Like we think that online is really cool, but when it hits a Steeler game, he says the phone just rings as soon as you put it down.
It's awesome.
Just like this incredible,
it's very powerful.
But it's $5 when you get it right. Just happens every once in a while.
Yeah. And the other thing is that those of us in this conversation, we love we might even have like 4K HDR 120 frames per second screens, but you also have to make sure that when you're talking about a popular sport, you also have to make sure that sport is enjoyable by someone who basically has a 720p screen that they got for $10 off of Craigslist.
And that's not hard. I mean, that's not. I mean, that's not a hard thing because we send it. Well, we're sending you all of those resolutions.
Yeah.
When HLS is, I mean, Apple's HLS solves that problem by, I can give you everything down to a 360p or 240p, image. But
you have to think about the graphics, right? You don't want graphics you can't read on that image.
We still design graphics around 640 by 360. So we look at graphics. Mostly when we do it, we design them around a 640 by 360. Can I read it at that resolution? And if I can't read it at that resolution, oftentimes there's a bunch of discussions about whether.
What does Amazon Prime do on Thursday night? Do they care about that stuff? Or do they know they're going to be on high res?
Yeah, they definitely care.
Yeah,
like
they
they
have
definitely pay attention. If you
I
take
have
a look
to say,
at it,
though, watching the World Series on 4K, even though it was upscaled 1080, really looked great.
You should see it when it looks
so nice.
You see it when it's 4K and when it's 8K.
Yeah.
Like baseball, I've been able to see baseball at 8K 120 frames per second
Wow.
on an 80-inch screen, and it is
You're there.
It is as if you were there. Like it's like you're looking at a window, and you there's part of your brain that wants to just.
And
look
now the
around
teams are saying, "But that's going to hurt our ticket sales."
Yeah, the ticket sales for
that's
NFL.
what's hurting. That's what's hurting ticket sales.
That's like the icing. Well, and again, that depends on the team. It depends. This gets back into the relationship management of every team. Like the Steelers is a good example. They're sold out for a decade.
Right.
Like they're not. Like you can't. Everybody's a season.
And the Oakland A's
Everybody in
have
the whole
5
stadium is
fans in the stands. So,
and that comes from you start moving your team around. You make a lot of bad decisions.
They're gonna go
you do
to
a bunch of other
Vegas is
things,
what
and it's
they're
hard to
gonna
get
do.
buy tickets.